just changing up the arrangement of the notes. So D minor 11 to G13, and then drop all three notes in the right hand, following the scale, and then the root and the third in the right hand for a C6-9 chord. In this video, we're going to look at probably one of the most important concepts in jazz, and that is chord extensions. Beyond the regular seventh chords, you've got extensions. So instead of just seventh chords, you've got ninths, 11ths, and 13ths added to those seventh chords. So there's extensions, and then there's alterations of those extensions. Understanding how that's all put together and the language behind it is what this video is all about. So if you really don't understand what chord symbols do and you don't understand extensions or alterations, then this is the video for you to watch. By the time you get finished this video, you will have a very clear understanding of what extensions and alterations are for basic chord progressions. If you build up in thirds from the root, you get a C major seventh chord. Extensions take that tertian harmony further and build in thirds from the seventh. So then you get the ninth, and then the 11th, and then the 13th, and then you're back to the root. Roots on the outside, and thirds in the middle. These three notes are the extensions of this chord. 9, 11, and 13 of this chord. Now, why does it sound wrong? And the answer is, when you're putting extensions on chords, it's important to note that sometimes they create harsh sounds. They clash with certain notes in the seventh chord. For example, if this is C major 7, the 11 clashes with that because it creates what's called a flat 9 with the third of the chord. So if the upper structure notes or the extensions clash with like the chord tones in a harsh way, they're not available. They don't make sense as a chord, because chords have to make sense harmonically in order to sound good to the ear. You can't just play any old random chords. For example, C major 7, if you just throw that on top, that's not a chord. In order to make great chords, put as many extensions as you can that don't clash with the seventh chord. In this particular case, we're going to put a ninth and a 13th, and you can see that Chordy believes that this is a C major 9 with a 13. It's true. C major 7th chord, 9 and 13. Now, if we put the 11th in there, Chordy gets all confused. It says, well, that's a C major 13 add 4 chord. Well, there's no such thing really, because this just sounds wrong, because that note is not available. The next step in the process to understanding how to make great chords is when you can alter an extension. That means if you have a seventh chord on the bottom and then you use your extensions, can you alter those extensions in order to make better sounding chords? So let's try that. So this would be a flat 9, but Chordy says that's not a chord, and it's true. Why? Because that flat 9 clashes with the root of the chord. It's like a flat 9. Doesn't make sense. So then let's go back to our 9 and let's try a sharp 9. Again, clashes. Now, if we were to change the chord in the bottom to a C7th chord, now we can play the ninth and the flat 9 and the sharp 9, and all of those are available. So this is a C7 flat 9 chord, and this is a C7 sharp 9 chord. Make sense? So extensions are essentially when you're talking about the root being C, these notes here can all be alterations of extensions. So let's try a few more. C7, there's our ninth, our flat 9, and our sharp 9. Let's go to the 11th. It's not available because, again, it creates a flat 9 with a third of the chord. Let's try sharp 11. Ooh, look at that, that's available. Interestingly enough, if you put the ninth on there as well, it's a lovely sounding chord. That's a chord that's very much used in jazz. And then if you go up to the 13th, you can have a flat 13, but then the sharp 13, you'll never see that because the sharp 13 is actually a flat 7. So for example, let me write that down here. You'll never see a chord that says C7 sharp 13 because that doesn't exist, because a sharp 13 is actually a flat 7. So in a dominant 7th chord, it's already in there. It's already the 7th of the chord. So there's no sharp 13, it's just a 7th. Okay, so flat 13, yes. So for example, if we played a C7 chord with a flat 9 and a flat 13, you'd get a C7 flat 9 flat 13 chord. Very common in jazz to have that chord. The concept of extensions is relatively simple. You have ninths, 11ths, and 13ths, and their alterations within whatever scale or key of the moment that you're in. Let's take a look at the most common chord extensions for a major 7th chord. They would be C major 7, 9, and 13. The alterations for those create problems. So just the 9th and the 13th. However, there is an alteration that does work, and that means take the 11th and make it a sharp 11. So now we have a C major 13 chord with a sharp 11. Very common chord. It's a lovely sounding chord, especially when you voice it correctly. Hear that? Amazing, right? So now let's go to minor chords. So we have a C minor 7th. The 9th is available and the 11th is available. And you can see that Chordy likes that. It's like C minor 9, 11th chord. But if you start altering those things, get weird sounds, right? That's not even a chord. So when you alter the 9ths and the 11ths in a minor chord, it doesn't really work. Let's try the 13th. It does work. It doesn't create too much clash, but usually the 13th is not available because the 3rd of the chord is an E flat and it changes the quality of the chord to an F7 chord because that's an E flat tritone. So there's a tritone in there that you don't want. Tritones are usually reserved for dominant 7th chords and minor 7 flat 5 chords, otherwise known as half diminished chords. For example, this is a C minor 7 flat 5, which is also C minor half diminished, written like this. C half diminished 7th chord. Okay, then let's move on to our dominant 7th chord, C7, and lots of things are available here. It just depends on how you put them together. For example, if you do this, that's a flat 9, flat 13. Those are extensions. The natural 9 and the natural 13 are also great extensions. Also the sharp 11. That's a great sounding chord. Okay, so almost every single note, if the root were C, all of these notes are available. It just depends on how you put them together. So the concept is relatively simple. Putting them together as actual chords and then voicing them, that's the more complex equation. Let's do one more, which is our minor 7 flat 5 chord. Typically with minor 7 flat 5, none of the extensions are available. They just muddy the waters. Now you could say that's a C minor 9 flat 5 chord. It does work. That kind of works too. The 13th, however, is not really available. So you can have the 9th and the 11th, but that's not very common because minor 7 flat 5s are interesting chords. They act very differently than most chords because they're leading to dominant 7th chords. So you would start with a minor 7 flat 5 chord and then go to a dominant 7th chord. Okay? And then to the root of the chord. Therefore, what I've done is written out a few common progressions using this formula, using the extensions that we've talked about. And just before we go any further, if you like this video, just hit the little thumbs up button. It really helps the channel. And if you'd love to join the rest of the subscribers and subscribe to the channel, all you have to do is hit the little bell when you do, and we'll notify you of all of the upcoming videos that we're making. So the first one is the D minor 11th chord. So if we were to voice that in root position, you'd get this. With the 9th and the 11th, D minor 9 and 11. You don't need to write the minor 9. As soon as you write minor 11th, minor 9 is available automatically. So then if we just voice that here, with typically when you're voicing chords, you've got the chord tones in the left hand and other chord tones and extensions in the right hand. Let's voice this D minor 9 chord like this. Let's put the root and the third in the left hand. And then you've got this note here, which is the 11th, and then the 7th, and then the 9th, and then the 11th again. So nice sounding chord. So D minor 11 to G13. So that's a G7 chord, right? You've got the root and the 7th in the left hand. You've got the 3rd in the right hand, the 13th and the 9th. Now the reason why that sounds great is because it's built in fourths. So instead of tertian harmony, which is built in thirds, you're building chords in fourths. Just changing up the arrangement of the notes. So D minor 11 to G13, and then drop all 3 notes in the right hand, following the scale, and then the root and the 3rd in the right hand for a C6-9 chord. You get the idea? It's about putting as many extensions on the chord to make it sound nice, but also voicing it a proper way to make the progression sound beautiful. Let's play it one more time. Then what I did is I started altering the extensions. So now we're moving on to here, which is D minor 11th first. So that's like 2 minor 11 to 5-7 with a flat 9 to 1 major with a 13th. The little diamond symbol means major. Some people write it out like this and put a 7th or whatever extension you want. But in this particular case, I'm just using the triangle symbols, some more European thing. So you've got D minor 11th, and then instead of G7 with a 9, which we could do, we're gonna flat the 9 to make this chord, which is a G7 flat 9 chord, and then down to C13. So the first progression was this. The second one is this. Both of them sound nice. It's just a question of which extensions and alterations that you're using. All right, let's say that you're moving to minor chords. So a 2 minor 7 flat 5 to 5-7 to 1 minor 7th, that's different. So before we had 2 minor to 5-7 to 1 major, now we've got 2 minor 7 flat 5 to 5-7 to 1 minor 7th. So that's a different progression. So here's our first chord. There's a D half diminished 7th, or D minor 7 flat 5 according to Chordy. Same chord, it's just called different things. And then to our G7. So in this particular case, we've taken the natural 5 and we've sharped it. Now, you could also call that a G7 flat 13 chord. However, usually the flat 13 comes into play when you have a flat 9 and also a 5th of the chord. In this case, we've taken out the 5th. So as soon as we put the 5th in, look, it changes the quality of the chord. So we've got 2 minor 7, flat 5 to G7 with a sharp 5 to C minor with a 9th. Here's our 9th right here, the D. When you're voicing the D half diminished 7th chord, look at the left hand, still got chord tones there, and in the right hand, you're just playing the entire chord. It's just this chord inverted. So just take the top note and drop it down here to the C. And then you still got chord tones in the left hand for the G7 chord. Got the root and the 7th, and then in the right hand, you've got the 3rd, the sharp 5, and the root, and then down to C. Still chord tones in the left hand, root and 3rd, and then your chord on top. Okay, let's try another inversion of that. Let's go to the last progression, which is D half diminished 7th. This is a lovely one. And in this case, we're gonna play chord tones in the left hand, except just play the tritone. We don't need the root. So those two progressions are the same. They just sound different. All right, let me make this sheet music available to you. I'm gonna put a link up here in the corner. You can just go and download it. It's absolutely free to do that. There are other videos on this channel that are a bit more advanced than this, and it's really about taking this idea of extensions and alterations and just making better chord progressions out of them. But I think this is a good place to start. I think by now you understand what extensions and alterations are, what 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths are. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you. And if there's something that you don't understand, just ask your question in the comments and we'll get back to you.